What happens aback? A Hollywood icon freezes mid-sentence on a live television. Tears alive bottomward her face, and aback runs into the admirers while the host stands paralyzed, not knowing what's happening. Julia Roberts was answering an animated catechism about her latest blur. Aback, her eyes locked a simulate edition in the third row. Her smile vanished, her articulation broke, and afresh she did article no one, not Jimmy, not the producers, not the millions watching, could accept predicted. She abandoned the account and rushed into the audience. It was declared to be an archetypal Tuesday night on The Tonight Show. Julia Roberts, America's Sweetheart, announcement her new romantic comedy. Jimmy Fallon had able his accepted calendar of games, jokes, and celebrity banter. The admirers was energized, the bandage was ready, and the cameras were rolling live. Julia walked out to clap applause. That signature megawatt smile lighting up flat 6B. She hugged Jimmy, acclimatized into the guest chair, and the account began exactly as planned. "So, Julia, acquaint us about the new movie," Jimmy said with his appropriate enthusiasm. Julia laughed, ablution into a funny anecdote about her co-star. The admirers was bistro it up. Aggregate was perfect, but a fresh article shifted. Mid-sentence, Julia's eyes drifted past Jimmy, scanning the admirers as celebrities generally do during tapings. Her announcement afflicted instantly. The smile didn't aloof fade. It shattered. Her eyes widened, filled with tears in seconds, and her duke flew to her mouth. Jimmy noticed immediately. "Julia, are you okay?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. She was staring at Edition in the third row, bench, with an acuteness that fabricated the absolute studio abatement silent. The cameras didn't know area to focus. Jimmy didn't apperceive what to do. The admirers captivated its breath. "Julia?" Jimmy approved again, his voice softer now, concerned. Without warning, Julia stood up. Not slowly, not hesitantly. She stood with the kind of coercion that appropriate everything abroad in the apple had aback become irrelevant. "I'm sorry," she whispered, admitting it wasn't bright who she was answer to. "I'm sorry, I accept to." And afresh she ran, not walked, ran in heels, above the stage, bottomward the steps, beeline into the audience. Jimmy stood arctic at his desk, basis cards falling from his hands. The bandage stopped mid-note. Admirers' associates collectively gasped. A live television had aloof gone completely off script, but Cypher knew the story abaft that face in row 3. The face that fabricated Julia Roberts stop actuality as cine brilliant and become artlessly human. Rewind to months earlier. Sarah Mitchell, a year-old elementary academy ABCdery from Ohio, accustomed the diagnosis date pancreatic cancer. Months, maybe less. Her apple had burst in a distinct doctor's appointment. Sarah had one wish, not to biking the world, not to abdicate her job, aloof one simple wish, to accommodate Julia Roberts. It wasn't celebrity worship. It was article deeper. In When Sarah Was Activity through her divorce, adopting 2 kids alone, alive 2 jobs, she had watched article to talk about. On a decidedly aphotic night, Julia's character's backbone had given Sarah the adventuresomeness to accumulate going. The cine had adored her activity in a way Julia would never know. For years, Julia Roberts had been Sarah's claimed symbol of resilience. Aback, Sarah's daughter, Emily, learned about her mother's wish. She tried everything. She wrote belles lettres to Julia's management. She acquaint on amusing media. She alleged radio stations. Nothing worked. You don't aloof accommodated Julia Roberts because you appetite to. But Emily didn't accord up. She began out Julia would be on The Tonight Show. She somehow, through an aggregate of persistence, luck, and apparently some all-powerful intervention, anchored tickets. Third row, bench. Sarah didn't know. Emily told her they were activity to New York for a girls' trip. One last adventure. Sarah was too anemic for long trips, but for canicule in New York with her daughter, she began the strength. They sat in that studio admirers with Sarah assertive it was aloof a fun appearance taping. She had no idea Julia Roberts was the guest. Aback to that moment, Julia was now in the admirers' aberrant amid seats aggravating to ability row 3. Security didn't know whether to stop her or advise her. Jimmy had assuredly abashed from abaft his desk, afterward her with his eyes, still absolutely confused, but dupe her instincts. Julia accomplished Sarah. "Oh my God," Julia said, admiration beside the seat, demography Sarah's hands. "Oh my God, it's you." Sarah was sobbing. "How did you know?" Subscribe and leave a comment, because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. Julia pulled out article from her pocket. A folded allotment of paper. It was a letter. Sarah's letter. The one Emily had accounting months ago that allegedly went unanswered, except it hadn't gone unanswered. Julia had apprehended it. She had apprehended every word. And she had been accustomed it with her cat and mouse for this moment. I got your daughter's letter, Julia said, her voice breaking. I knew you'd be here. I asked the producers to bench you absolutely. Where I could see you. The flat was dead silent. Alike Jimmy, continuing at the edge of the date, had tears alive down his face. The cameramen who had apparent aggregate in their careers were disturbing to keep their cameras steady. I accept capital to accommodated you my absolute life. Sarah managed to say through tears. You adored me once. I aloof capital to say acknowledge you before. Don't, Julia disconnected gently. Don't say afore anything. Your actuality now. That's what matters. This is a back Jimmy did article that would ascertain his absolute career as a host. He absolved off the stage, absolutely abandoning his desk, his show, his script, and abutting them in the audience. He knelt bottom-moored beside Julia and Sarah, and he did article that cipher expected. He took off his tie. It sounds strange, but anyone who knows Jimmy knows that tie is his armor. It's the compatible that separates Jimmy Fallon, the actuality from Jimmy Fallon, the performer. And he took it off and handed it to Sarah. This is from my Aboriginal Tonight appearance episode. Jimmy said quietly. Johnny Carson wore a tie like this. And Jay Leno gave me one aloof like it on my Aboriginal night. It's declared to represent that the appearance goes on. But tonight the appearance stops because some things are added important. He placed the tie in Sarah's hands. You accumulate this. And you bethink that Julia Roberts ran through a TV flat for you. That body's chock full aggregate for you. That tonight you were the star. The audience erupted not in applause, in something bigger, in aggregate catharsis. Bodies were standing, crying, holding anniversary other. The band, accustomed musicians who had played through every affectionate of show, were wiping their eyes. But Julia wasn't done. She pulled Sarah into a hug that lasted about a minute. The cameras kept rolling, but Cypher cared about the appearance anymore. This wasn't entertainment. This was humanity. Aback, Julia finally pulled back. She said article that the microphones almost caught, but that anybody felt. You anticipate I adored you with a movie, but you adored me tonight by reminding me why I do this, why any of us do this. It's not about the acclaim or the movies. It's about connection, about analogous to someone. You mattered to me afore I alike met you. She afresh did something extraordinary. She took off her bracelet, a simple argent alternation she'd been wearing, and bound it around Sarah's wrist. This was my mother's. Julia said she gave it to me aback. I got my Aboriginal cine roll. She told me to abrasion it whenever I needed to bethink who I absolutely am below all the Hollywood stuff. I appetite you to have it because you reminded me tonight. Abaft the scenes, the producers were in chaos. They had absolutely absent control of the show. They were declared to be on a bartering breach by now. They had added segments planned. They had network admiral calling, but not a single actuality-appropriate asset away. Some moments are bigger than television schedules. Jimmy fabricated an accommodation that, according to NBC standards, he apparently wasn't accustomed to make. He angry to the camera and said, "We're activity to booty a break, but we're not activity to commercial. We're activity to let this moment be. Sometimes the best television is aloof life." We'll be right back. The appearance went to an extended break, but the cameras backward on. The admirers backward in their seats. Nobody capital to leave. Julia backward with Sarah for addition minutes. They talked. They cried. They laughed. Emily, Sarah's daughter, abutting them, ball so adamantly she could almost breathe. Aback the appearance finally resumed, Jimmy didn't abide with his planned segments. He brought Julia back to the couch. But he additionally brought Sarah and Emily, and he did something unprecedented. He gave them the blow of the show. Aloof conversation, no games, no ball bits, aloof Jimmy, Julia, and a woman who was dying, talking about life, movies, love, and what absolutely matters. Sarah told the adventure of watching article to allocution about on that dark night in. Julia told the adventure of filming that movie. Not alive it would beggarly so much to someone. Emily told the adventure of her mother's backbone through terminal illness. Jimmy almost spoke. He aloof let them share. At the end of the show, article happened that the Tonight Show had never done before. Jimmy didn't do his accepted closing. Instead, he let Julia abutting the show. Julia looked directly into the camera and said, "If you're watching this and your activity through article hard, I appetite you to apperceive something. You matter. Your adventure matters. The actuality you think you're too baby to amount to, you amount to them. You amount to me. And tonight accepted that a back we stop assuming an alpha actuality human, that's a back the absolute abracadabra happens. The adventure never aired normally. NBC fabricated the aberrant accommodation to air the absolute unedited taping, commercials, and all with the admonishing that it independent continued affecting content. It became the best-watched Tonight Show adventure in years. It was aggregate over actor times on amusing media. It won an Emmy not for comedy, but for altruistic broadcasting. But the story didn't end that night. Sarah anesthetized away weeks later. She was active wearing Julia's armlet and Captivation Jimmy's tie. But afore she died, she beatific belletrist to both of them. Jimmy apprehended on air 1 ages afterwards, and he could almost get through it. Dear Jimmy, you accomplished me that sometimes the best affair a leader can do is stop arch and start serving. You chock-full your appearance for me. You gave me your tie, which represented your dreams, because you absolutely my dream of a fair Julia mattered more. That's not actuality a acceptable host. That's actuality a acceptable human. Acknowledge you for assuming the apple that television can be added than entertainment. It can be love. Julia never about aggregate her letter, but she mentioned in afterwards interviews that Sarah's words afflicted how she chose cine roles, absorption added on stories that could amount to addition the way her films had mattered to Sarah. Allotment and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. The tie now sits in a frame in Jimmy's appointment forth with a photo from that night. Julia's mother's armlet was returned to Julia afterwards Sarah's burial for Sarah's wishes with an agenda that said, pass it on to addition who needs to bethink they matter. Julia has since accustomed that armlet to different bodies in crisis. It's become a symbol of affiliation anesthetized from actuality to person, accustomed Sarah's spirit forward. Jimmy afflicted how he does his appearance after that night. Already a month, he dedicates an absolute articulation to absolute people stories. No celebrities, no scripted comedy, just bodies abutting with humans. The articulation is berserk abhorred with network admiral and berserk admired by viewers. Aback Jimmy was afterwards asked about that night in an interview. He said article that captured everything. I anticipation my job was to accomplish people laugh. And it is. But that night taught me my absolute job is to accomplish bodies feel. Sometimes that's laughter, but sometimes it's tears. Sometimes it's aloof actuality present when addition needs the apple to stop for a moment. Julia ran into that audience because she accepted article I was still learning. A claim is meaningless unless you use it to accomplish addition else's activity beggarly something. The bequest of that night extends far above television. Hospitals above the country started Julia Roberts' nights area agents members chock-full their routines to sit with terminal patients. Schools started teaching about the adventure in classes about empathy. The video has been acclimated in analysis sessions worldwide. Sarah's babe Emily started a foundation alleged the Third Row Project that grants wishes for bodies with terminal illnesses. Julia Roberts is a LATH member. Jimmy Fallon donated the absolute announcement revenue from that adventure to armamentarium it. The face in row 3 bench changed everything. It reminded Julia Roberts why she became an actress. It accomplished Jimmy Fallon what it really agency to host. It showed millions of admirers that sometimes the best powerful affair you can do is stop assuming an alpha actuality present. Sarah Mitchell never became famous, but for one night her face, her presence, her existence mattered so abundant that a Hollywood icon and a backward night host chock-full everything for her. Jimmy still keeps a photo from that night on his desk. Julia reportedly watches the video whenever she questions why she's still acting. Emily continues her mother's foundation. And about in Homes Above America, bodies who watched that night remember the moment television chock-full actuality appearance and became a mirror, reflecting back to us what we could be if we chose affiliation over performance. That's the ability of one face in a crowd. That's the abracadabra of endlessly the show. That's what happens aback we accept to be animal first and aggregate abroad second.